Hi, welcome everyone. On behalf of Gallup Solutions, I take this opportunity to introduce Gallup and have you all on what seems to be an exciting webinar on business transformation using test advisory services. My name is Sairam. I run the global marketing at Gallup Solutions. Gallup Solutions is a 10-year-old US-based co-located independent software testing services and specialist QA staffing services company with offices in Philadelphia and Newark in California. Over the last decade, Gallup has been championing the cause of software quality and has been working with large proven global enterprises and independent software vendors, assuring them acceleration of market readiness of the business critical software and enterprise class applications and products. Gallup continuously invests in its proprietary IP, the Enterprise Test Acceleration Suite. Gallup is a 100% subsidiary of Signity Technologies, the world's third largest independent software testing services company. Gallup constantly strives its best to continuously produce industry-leading white papers, blogs, and webinars, and demonstrates consistent thought leadership. In this endeavor, we bring this webinar. In today's digital world, as businesses strive to produce high-performance outcomes, business transformation is a key driver. Strategic Test Advisory Services is an enabler in this front, and we have Sandhya Nagaraj today presenting all our experiences and the framework that we have at Gallup, which has been helping many a large enterprise in achieving this objective. Sandhya is an Associate Vice President with Gallup with more than 18 years of industry standard experience in test management consulting, test maturity assessments, software quality assurance, internal audits, and knowledge management. Her core competencies are in the areas of designing process architecture at enterprise level, driving test transformation programs, conducting test assessments, establishing governance frameworks as part of building and maintaining large test centers of excellence around various enterprise client organizations. Over the last 15 plus years, Sandhya has led over 50 enterprise class test organizational transformation initiatives across the globe. Without much delay, let me hand this over to Sandhya, and I'm sure this will be an insightful webinar for all of us. Thank you so very much. Sandhya, over to you.
Thank you, Sairam. That was a very nice intro. Let me, as Sairam was mentioning, let me take you through the first bit of the transformation program that we actually have as part of our Gallup services. The Test Advisory Services, the Test Advisory Services is usually started off with the assessments, the in-depth assessments that we conduct to understand the as-is state. But for today's session, I'll quickly walk you through the agenda, wherein the first and the foremost item would be the context setting for this entire webinar, and then a quick overview of what Gallup is and what are the core elements of the Test Advisory Services. What are some of those business drivers that actually trigger the transformation programs, the assessment framework that we use, and a sample report that I would want to walk you through, and why our clients choose Gallup as part of their transformation program. Coming to context setting, we all are aware of the very dynamic market situation today. Now that said, we see that the business transformation is key to meeting the market demands and assuring a higher ROI. Businesses are increasingly challenged to becoming digital and be available at all times in all forms. And organizations need to perform they see a need to transform the traditional ways of working to new age models of delivering high performance outcomes. Now with all that in the forefront, the client's IT function and especially the testing function are put on a very huge demand due to this challenge. So this has put a lot of thinking, and we at Gallup have designed a robust framework that helps in addressing the challenges and the risks. So our framework is designed in such a way that the transformation journey is first kicked off with a holistic assessment of the testing function to understand the as-is practices. Now when I say as-is practices, we would want to understand the key strengths and what are the various opportunities of improvements in the organization, and how do we go about addressing those improvements in a structured and a very timely manner. I'll pause here for a minute and then take you through what we as an organization are. Gallup is a pure play independent testing services company since the year 2003. And we are a subsidiary of Signity Technologies, which is the world's third largest independent testing services company. Now, while I'm talking to you, we are being considered for the second place. We are being looked at the second largest independent testing services company. Our focus is mainly in the North America with an on-site services model, and we are considered as the local partner with a global delivery capability. We also have a complementary testing R&D support team, which we let our clients use when they require any specific R&D work to be done. We have, through our vast experience, we have built the proprietary testing IPs, which comprise of the test accelerator suite for enhancing the overall productivity. We do have partnerships and alliances with leading test tool vendors, and we are a trusted QA partner for various ISVs and enterprises. Last but not the least, we have a strong executive management who have started their careers with testing, and we are a completely testing company. And with that, I would want to take you to the test advisory services elements. This is seen as a niche C-level initiative. When I say C-level initiative, any transformation journey is seen as an organization change management. Now, any organization change management in any organization is driven at the leadership level, and hence the discussions start off at the CXO tier. And the CXO tiers, usually this kind of programs are driven using a top-down approach, and then our initial set of discussions start off either with the CIO or the CTO roles. Any typical assessment engagement is of a 6 to 8 weeks duration. And the team usually comprises, the assessment team usually comprises of 2 to 4 technical and process experts, and the average experience of the team is anywhere between 12 to 20 years. Now, the perspective we bring to this assessment is around process, people, and tools. Now, these are the basic categories that we have under which we do the reviews or the assessment, and then we put together the recommendations around these areas. The approach is both test process and quality centric. When I say quality centric, we do a lot of analysis around the defects quality and then see how the quantitative measurements can be brought in and how the data analysis can be shown in a quantified manner. The assessment usually comprises of reviewing the process documentation and how the process documentation is implemented in the projects. We send out the role-based questionnaires and we conduct interviews, which are usually closed-door in nature. Our assessment framework is a blended model of CMMI, TMMI, and TPI, and the findings that we capture as part of the assessments are segregated as areas of excellence or strengths, then the areas of improvements, and a performance baseline. That is specifically if our clients would want to understand where they stand on a maturity scale. The roadmap for implementing the improvements is usually pragmatic and in a phased manner, wherein we give the timelines of 3 or 6 months, and then anywhere as a long term, which is anywhere beyond 9 to 12 months of timeline. What are the business drivers that usually trigger the transformation journey? It's first and foremost the quality, wherein the organization first has to look at how there has to be brought a culture change or a thought shift in terms of bringing or building quality right from the beginning. So some of the questions that the organization will have to ask is, did we define the quality in the first place? And that said, what is it that we are, what is the quality of the application that is being sent into production, what is the defect leakage into production, and how many incidents are actually due to the defects, and did we satisfy our customers. The second step we need to take is look at the test effectiveness from a quality point of view. What has been the effectiveness of the overall testing function? Now, one of the key things that we need to keep in mind is start shift left of the testing activity. That is, we try and introduce the testing activity right from the requirements phase. That is the early introduction of testing teams into the development life cycle. So that way, some of the questions we get to answer is what has been the test coverage, what is the test case yield, that is how well the test cases have been written, what is the rejected defect percentage. Now the testing team starts logging the defects, but how many of them are valid defects is something which we need to take a look at. And what is the rework effort on the test scripts? How much of effort is going on fixing the bad test scripts? So these are some of the questions that will help us understand the effectiveness of testing. The third is how well are we adhering to the schedule? Now we have a release roadmap defined by the product management team, and how well are we sticking to it, and how good are we in terms of time to market? So some of the questions that we get to answer is what is the milestone adherence rate, what is the overall project level schedule adherence, and what has been the impact because of these schedule delays. Finally, what is the efficiency? Now, efficiency has been a very interesting topic for a lot of the leadership folks. And some of the key questions that we have to answer here is what has been the expended effort, what have been some of the innovations that we have brought into the system, improvements that we have brought in, both from a technology and a process perspective, what has been the coverage, and what finally, with all these, we get to answer, did we actually achieve the desired quality? That is, we go back to the first question of what we have defined as quality. So these are some of the key things that drive us, or that put us onto a map of a transformation program. Coming to the assessment framework, as I mentioned earlier, the entire assessment activity is carried out in 3 distinct areas, that is process, people, and tools. Coming to processes, we first would want to understand the application life cycle that is being used, the methodology that is followed, how stable are the requirements, what is the mechanism to handle the changes in the requirements, what kind of process artifacts have been defined for the testing teams to consume, what is the application quality at that point in time, and how these process entities are being used in the projects to churn out the actual testing artifacts. And the release management, what is the release mechanism, what is the release calendar like, and how well the release gate criteria are defined is what we would want to understand. And finally, what kind of metrics are being tracked by the project teams, and how are these metrics being rolled up to the program level or the organization level. So how effectively the leadership team is being able to make decisions based on these metrics is what we understand. Coming to people, I did mention about doing the closed door interviews. Now that said, we talk to the leadership team. We also interact with the business team. Now, when I say we are doing a test assessment, we don't limit ourselves to only the testing function. We also talk to the groups that interface with the testing function. For example, it could be the developer community, it could be the business team, it could be the environment management team, or the release and support groups. There could also be cases where there are vendors already associated, so we would also want to talk to the vendor teams to understand the overall perspective of the testing or quality as a entity. And the tools, coming to tools part, we would want to understand what kind of tools are being used within the testing life cycle, and how these tools are currently being integrated with the other tools used in the extended SDLC. What is the utilization like? How are the projects using it? Is there some kind of a standardization where we can generate some meaningful reports from the tools, what kind of cost-benefit analysis is being carried out. So these are the things we would want to understand from a tools perspective. So the information captured by all these means is synthesized, and then we identify the trends and the areas of improvement and put together a recommendation on how to address these improvements. Now, if there is a specific need for putting together a test maturity rating on a scale, then we would put together a quantified maturity rating for the organizations to take that as a yardstick and then reach the desired maturity level. Coming to the assessment approach, it's a three-phased approach wherein the first phase we would focus more on understanding the client organization, wherein we would want to clearly understand what is the objective for this assessment, what are the various roles in an organization, how many business units we have to cover, and what are the key concerns or challenges or areas of concern because of which this assessment activity was triggered. Now, in addition to this, we also do a lot of prep work in terms of identifying the participants for the assessment, identifying the projects, and getting accesses to the repositories, etc. So all the prep work is done during the understand phase. And coming to the assess phase, this is where the actual assessment happens, wherein the documentation review is started, the project reviews get started. When I say project reviews, we take a look at how well the processes have been implemented in the projects and what kind of test artifacts are being generated by each of these projects. We also send out role-based questionnaires. We customize the questionnaires based on the roles that have been identified to participate in the assessment activity. And subsequently, we also conduct one-to-one interviews, which are closed-door interviews. And in addition, we also start getting the demos and do the tool reviews to understand how the projects are using the tools and what kind of reports are being generated. Coming to recommend phase, all the information we capture during the assess phase is synthesized, and we start putting together the recommendations to address the gaps, and also we see how well the strengths can be extended to the wider groups in the organization. And then we put together a roadmap to implement the improvements in a phased and a timely manner. The key deliverables of the entire assessment activity would be a detailed assessment plan, which is drawn out in the first week, that is as part of the understand phase, and then the assessment report and implementation roadmap, which is delivered as part of the recommend phase, which is towards the end of the assessment engagement. Now, I was mentioning about the three distinct areas in which we do the assessment, that is process, people, and tools. What we have done here is we have listed all the key areas that we cover as part of each of this category. So if you see, this is the laundry list. Now, every item in this particular list is part of the testing life cycle, and it does cover the entire testing life cycle as well as interacts with some of the key activities in the extended software development life cycle. So some of the areas that I can pick out from the process point of view is, say, requirements management, how well the requirements management is currently happening, and what is the involvement of testing function in the requirements workshop. Do they get to attend the requirements workshop? Do they get to review the requirements to churn out the, or to iron out the ambiguities? And then do they also get to define the test cases well ahead so that they get enough time to execute multiple cycles to see that the coverage is adequate at the end of the testing phase? Likewise, defect management. What kind of defect severities have been defined? What is the quality of defects that are being captured? How early are they being captured is what we try and understand. Coming to people part, we would want to understand the roles and associated responsibilities. What is the resource utilization like, and what is the governance framework? What are the communication protocols established, and what is the mechanism to identify the training needs and then impart them and get the team skilled adequately to be able to do the testing accordingly. And last but not the least, what is the mechanism to capture the knowledge? Especially today, the organizations are facing very tough challenges in extracting the tacit knowledge and capturing them and storing them in a portal. So that is one of the key challenges we have been seeing that the organizations are struggling with. Coming to tools, we would want to understand what are the various tools currently being used across the testing life cycle and how well they integrate with the other tools that are being used in the SDLC. One example I could take is, suppose the requirements or the business analyst community may be using one tool and for the management of requirements, while the testing team may be using another tool, say for example Quality Center for managing the testware or the test suite. So one key question that comes is, how do we integrate both these tools to be able to establish a traceability to understand how much of coverage we have achieved through the testing function. So that is something which we would want to understand and see what kind of improvements we can bring in and what good reports we can generate by way of integrating all these tools, so that the team can cut down on manually preparing a lot of these reports and presenting it to the leadership team. Coming to the details of what we do in each of these phases as part of the assessment activity, as I mentioned, the week one, usually the understand phase is of the duration of 1 week, wherein we would want to understand the objectives and the pain areas. We would want to understand the client's business goals and what has been the driving factor for doing this assessment. And then what is the organization structure like? How is the overall IT organization structure, and how does the testing team fit in this overall IT organization is what we would want to understand. And then understand the client's organization's project governance model. Basically, when we say governance model, how is the testing team interacting with all the other groups, and what are the various kinds of reports that are being generated, what kind of metrics are being captured, what kind of reviews are built in place is what we would want to understand. And finally, we would want to identify the projects and the key contacts with whom we would want to interact, and then gather information to be able to complete the assessment activity. We would also parallelly plan and schedule the interviews and then start customizing the questionnaires and send it to the identified stakeholders. As part of the assess phase, we conduct the interviews and then document results. Then we review the tool's usage, then consolidate the questionnaire responses that we start getting from the roles that we have identified. And then we start analyzing and evaluating and putting together the document in terms of how these recommendations can be implemented to be able to take the organization to the next level. As part of the recommend phase, the information that we capture as part of the analysis phase or the assess phase is synthesized to put together a maturity rating, and then identify the opportunities for improvement and put the recommendations to address them, and also define an implementation roadmap to attain a target maturity level. While we have been working with many clients, one of the key questions that has often come up is what effort we as an organization should put in the overall assessment activity. So this is an indicative effort slide that we have put. Given the we've taken one sample organization where we have identified all the roles that we have spoken to, and a sample or an indicative effort that we have put just so that the clients understand how much of effort they have to put as part of this entire engagement activity. So if you see, for us the key point of contact would be the person who we would be constantly interacting with. So that is the role where we would want a lot of information and lot of effort to be put as part of this assessment engagement. While all the other roles, it is only need-based, or as part of the interviews, we would only want about 1 hour or to 1.5 hours time from each of these roles. And if there is any specific need while doing the assessment, we would want to go back to get clarifications. So it is nothing more than, say, 1.5 hours to maximum 2 hours from each person that we identify as a participant in the assessment, except the point of contact that we keep interacting during the course of the engagement. Coming to the key benefits of TAS, although we say these are the key benefits of TAS, I would want to mention here that these benefits can be realized once the improvements have been implemented, and we have the Gallup team has been brought in to help the client address these improvements. So some of the clients that we have worked with in the past, we have shown the improvement in quality by say 20 to 30%. Some of the key things that have contributed is by way of increasing the test coverage. As I mentioned earlier, shift left has been the policy for us, wherein we have told the client team that we as a testing team would want to be involved as part of the requirements analysis phase. So we get to participate in the requirements workshop to understand what is it that is being scoped for that particular release, and our understanding is as good as what the business analyst team or the developer community has. And then the standard methodologies that we have brought in place have been a contributor to the improved quality as well. And we have also shown the reduction in time to market by at least 15 to 25%. And again, here the key contributors have been bringing in automation and also introducing test accelerators at the right places, and also introducing best practices that we have as an organization practiced internally, and we have extended that to our clients as well. And the reduction in cost, testing cost, has been realized through tool integration and capacity planning, effective capacity planning, and identifying reusable components and then using them subsequently in the next cycles. So the key contributors, as I mentioned, have been the reusable test assets, and then improved consistency and predictable process performance by way of our Gallup test methodologies, and then strict adherence to industry best practices. So these have been some of the yardsticks for us to measure and show the benefits as part of our engagement with the clients. Coming to sample report, I would want to take you through what it looks, the assessment report actually looks like. Now, I was mentioning about our test organization maturity rating. So these are the levels on which we actually rate the organization in terms of a testing maturity. It's a 5-level rating scale, and it is very much in line with the TMMI framework, wherein the first level is the initial, where the processes are very much ad hoc in nature. The second is the managed, defined, measured, and optimization is are the various levels. So every test area that you have seen in the earlier slide, which was categorized under process, people, and tools, have a mapping with the key process areas that you see in this particular slide. This is how a sample maturity level looks like. Now, if you see the organization, the target organization here was rated at maturity level 3, wherein although you see some of the areas are in amber and some are red in color, but largely the process areas have been satisfied and they have been rated at level 3. But Although some of the process areas have been green, there have been instances where we have identified improvements and then have worked with the clients to address those improvements. And we have a criteria to rate the particular organization or a particular process area, either satisfied, partially satisfied, or not satisfied. And with this, we rate the organization on a scale of 1 to 5. And then the organization, we also put together a roadmap to help the organization reach the desired next maturity level in a given time frame. So that has been the mechanism with which we have rated the organization. Now that said, not every assessment engagement would involve giving a maturity rating. This is only given specifically where the clients have requested for. But if there have been cases where the clients only want to understand what is working well and what is not, and we have accordingly gone ahead and put together the final report in that cases as well. Coming to how we put together a sample recommendation, wherein one of the areas have been to align QA into Agile mainstream. The example we have taken is the organization which has been following Agile as their life cycle methodology. Now, although there were multiple teams that were working, multiple sprint teams that were working, the testing processes that were followed across these sprints were very, very inconsistent. So the recommendation was to at least formalize the testing life cycle across the groups and then institutionalize this across various projects or sprints. And then active QA participation in the sprint goals. There were instances where the testing teams would not actively participate in estimating or during the sprint planning meeting. So that was one of the recommendations we gave, and the potential benefits that we put together in terms of what the organization can see once this recommendation was implemented was improved competency and consistency, and of course the process improvement and optimization. So usually if you see the structure, that is how we put together. We put a key observation, what should be the recommendation for addressing that particular improvement observation, what is the benefit that the client gets to see once the recommendation is implemented, and what is the associated priority that this recommendation would have. So the priority will help us in defining the roadmap for taking the improvements further, and it will also help the leadership team to assign adequate or the required effort to this entire improvements program. This is another sample recommendation wherein the observation was the lack of quantitative goals, and also whatever goals were defined, they were not in line with the organization goals. So the recommendation was to identify business goals for testing, specifically for testing, such as what should be the percentage increase in automation, especially after say 6 months or 9 months, etc. And then what should be the percentage reduction in production defects. Now this particular release, X percentage would have been the production defects. So in the subsequent release, how much should it be reduced by? So that could be one of the goals that the organization can set. And what should be the review efficiency? What should be the reduction in the schedule and effort variation are some of the goals that the organization could think of and set as a target or a goal for the testing teams to take and start running with. And the associated potential benefits and the priority also was assigned. Coming to another sample recommendation, wherein especially this was pertaining to the sprint planning, where the observation was that testing is impacted due to high number of story points. Now, I did mention about one of the examples of testing not being part of the estimation or the planning activity, where the story points that had to be developed during the sprint were very high in number. There are a lot of story points being included, and the testing time was getting crunched. There was no adequate testing happening. The coverage was not up to the mark. So one of the key recommendations we put together was to work out detailed estimates for all the testing related tasks. Now, as a testing team, first involve the team and then identify all those testing related activities that have to be done. For example, it could be the requirements review, it could be the new functionality testing, or it could also be the end-to-end regression or the partial regression for that particular new functionality. So all those have to be identified and then scoped out and detailed out as part of the sprint planning meeting, and ensure that all these are addressed in that particular sprint. So the potential benefits that the organization received was achieving a higher quality and a greater productivity. And of course, the associated priority was high because it really made a difference in terms of how the testing improved in terms of efficiency and the overall effectiveness as well. We've been talking about what an implementation roadmap. I've been telling number of times about how we put together a roadmap for improvement. This is a sample structure of how we actually derive implementation roadmap. Now, I was mentioning about putting together the priority for every recommendation. And now that priority will help us identifying what can be achieved within the short term or the within the 4 months period, which we usually say as quick wins. So some of the key things, now usually if you see, building blocks are something which we want to take and address and strengthen them so that any further improvements that has to be made will be over and above the strengthened building blocks. So if you see here the samples, process standardization, or setting up a formal QA function, or setting up the metrics and dashboard, all these are seen as the building blocks of a testing function. So these have to be strengthened first, and these definitely get the organization quick wins and quick benefits. And then the subsequent improvements that we can think of for the next term would be introducing the non-functional testing, or performing root cause analysis, or regression automation. All these are the next steps wherein the organization can slowly start getting the teams to involve and performing. Say for example, let's take the case of root cause analysis. Once the teams are aware of how to capture the metrics and how to infer them, the root cause analysis would be the next step. So identify the root causes and start addressing them so that we prevent the defects then and there. We get to bring in efficiencies in the system right from the beginning. And if you see the long term, the first thing that we have mentioned is statistical prediction techniques. So this is one of the examples I would definitely want to take. Now, one is the organizations have been challenged enough in terms of getting the teams to capture the metrics and present the reports. Now, having the teams build some kind of a comfort level in presenting the metrics and then also doing the root cause analysis. Now, by this time, organization would have captured good amount of history data. Now, with that history data, we help the projects to use the history data and arrive at, say, what kind of defects can be predicted, or at least how many defects can be predicted. Now, that prediction will help the testing teams set a target and go by defining how many test cycles would be required to capture all those predicted defects. So, in a way, we set the foundation and then we start building on those foundations in a phased manner, so that at the end of the overall journey, we have an optimized testing function that can be more or less seen as a testing center of excellence. Now, why our clients would want to work with Gallup? One is the good fit, wherein we bring to the table a lot of experience in terms of building the TCOEs for large enterprises, And we also have been working constantly on building reusable assets, building test accelerators and frameworks. That has been one of the key factors why we have time and again been asked to come and help out with our clients. Well, another factor is the flexibility and the agility we bring on to the table. Now, the teams are very, very flexible, and we also have a good understanding of the culture and the ability to support varying business needs. The other thing is the thought leadership that we bring. The management, the Gallup management comprises of industry recognized leaders in QA. We do have a dedicated R&D in software testing, which we extend to our clients if there are any specific research programs to be undertaken on behalf of the client. The other thing that we take a lot of pride is the test acceleration suite that we have built in-house. Now that has been extended to our clients to help them achieve efficiencies in the overall testing life cycle, and also have been able to show a lot of benefits, and we have transferred those benefits to our clients as well. And last but not the least, we have a great passion for QA, and all our team members are career testers. And we see the our testing activity as testing only and definitely not testing also. So that is something which we take a great pride in. I was mentioning about the testing accelerators that we have built in-house. I would want to end this session with a quick overview of what we have as part of this suite. One is the enhanced productivity by leveraging the proprietary IP, and then building these accelerators with a decade of experience, and the solution for gaps not addressed by the open source and the commercial tools. We have the in-house specialist team that has been working constantly, and we do have seamless integration with the leading market tools. And we are a pro agile and test-driven development shop. And these accelerators are offered as value adds, as I mentioned earlier, at no charge. And then these definitely help in jump-starting the test effort with a quicker ROI. That has been the content for today's session. Any questions?
Thank you, Sandhya. That was a highly informative session on business transformation using test advisory services. The floor is now open for questions and answers, and Sandhya will be taking questions from all of you. So guys, please go ahead.
This question from Raghu Kundurthi. I think the question is all about which phase with the definitions and ownerships of level 1, level 2 and level 3 defects would be captured.
Oh yeah. Now, if we are getting the testing teams involved right from the requirement phase, what we do is, one of the practices we have introduced is to identify the requirements ambiguities in the requirements. And we have also taken a step ahead in identifying and classifying these defects as per their severity, and we have assigned the severity levels to the ambiguities we have identified in the defects that have been identified as part of the requirements phase. So the first step that we have identified the defects and prioritized them or assigned severity is right at the requirements level. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I hope so. That was an insightful explanation, Sandhya. Of course, we would always welcome back further comments by writing us back to marketing@gallup.net. Believe there have been a few other questions that have already been shared. The next one looks like, so this one, is understanding the maturity level a necessity?
Not really. There have been some clients who have asked us not to really put a number or a maturity rating, but just help them out with identifying what are the current strengths and what are the improvement opportunities, so that they can assign appropriate effort to take them to the next level where they want to see. So Giving the maturity rating is not a necessity in terms of, a mandatory, necessity is not the word, but it is not a mandatory thing. It all depends. Only if the client wants it specifically, then we have gone ahead and done the maturity rating for the client.
Right. I think the next one seems to be more on the sample size. What do you think would be a typical assessment sample size?
Usually, the 25 to 30% of the organization size is seen as a healthy sample. So when we say 25 to 30%, we don't limit ourselves to only testing functions. This sample size will also involve people from the interfacing groups, such as the developer community or the support staff or the test environment staff or the release staff, etc.
Right. So from a sample project standpoint, so how do you pick a sample project for an assessment?
Right. We would want to pick, say for example, we are taking a look at two projects. Now one of the projects would definitely, we would want to see is the one which is critical to business, and the other one maybe not so critical, but both these projects should have had at least 2 releases in production, and they should have at least gone through one complete cycle of testing.
Okay. So in terms of an assessment, what do you think would be a typical duration of that, and how many people would be a constituent?
Usually what we have seen is the assessment is anywhere up to 6 to 8 weeks, but that again depends on the number of locations that need to be covered. Now we have had engagements in the past where we have had to cover the lines of businesses which were in multiple geographies. So in that case the duration is slightly more. And the assessment team is anywhere between 2 to 3 people, wherein we have 2 people on site. As I mentioned earlier, it is a mix of both process and technical experts. And then we have 1 person supporting from offshore, where it's usually churning the data and then synthesizing the information captured, etc.
Right. And there seems to be another question from Ramakrishna. So in the context of evolving delivery methods, while we have waterfall, iterative, and agile, do you see any special approach being adopted to evaluate or assess organizations vis-a-vis these models?
Absolutely. The frameworks that we have developed usually are although we say they are technology agnostic or domain agnostic, some of the questions that we include or some of the key areas that we include are very, very specific to the life cycle model that is used. Say for example, if it is agile, if the organization is completely into agile, then our approach would be totally considering that, and the maturity rating also would be as per that. So the entire assessment framework gets customized based on the approach we take or the life cycle model that is currently being used at the client organization.
Wonderful. So in terms of the format for a kickoff meeting, so what do you think would be an ideal format?
Right. What we do is usually we would want to have all the stakeholders in this kickoff meeting. Now when I say all the stakeholders, it is the testing as well as the development, the leadership team, the development team, the business analyst team. So everybody who the organization thinks should be involved, we would want all of them to be part of the kickoff meeting. What we do is we take them through the entire assessment approach, and we also let them know who all should be involved in as a participant in this particular assessment. We identify the participants, we take them through what kind of roles we would want, and then what kind of projects has to be picked. And then I help them identify the participants as per the roles, so that we can start off talking to people and then sending out the role-based questionnaires. So usually the kickoff meeting, we tell the entire stakeholders forum that this is the way we approach, this is what you expect at the end of the session.
Very well said. So for the benefit of the audience, if you have to summarize the 3 key takeaways that you would like to share while business transformation is assured to test advisory, so what would be those 3, Sandhya?
The very first thing is this particular activity brings in a lot of credibility in terms of putting together a lot of facts in front of the leadership team, so that it'll help them decide how much of effort has to be put in this entire transformation journey.
Wonderful. So in the middle of that, let me take this one from Gaurav. Does Gallup approach to test center of excellence assessment, including the cost, effort, and complexity factors, differ much for IT services organizations and software product organizations? That's an interesting question, looks like. Do you have a take on that?
Yes. We do consider all aspects of the transformation, which definitely includes cost. And then we help the organizations tread the path. Now, when we put together the entire approach for taking them through this transformation journey, we also tell them what is it that it takes for them to reach that particular level, and at that particular level, what is the benefit they reap, or what is the return they get on the investment they have done so far. Right. So it depends on what is the investment required and what is the benefit they get at the end of the term.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, I think the answer looks been very insightful. So let me kind of summarize. I think on behalf of Gallup, today's webinar, I'm very sure has been very informative. Some of the key takeaways looks like, or how do we operate with a consistent and focused testing approach, having a predictable testing duration and cost, and we also touched about reducing the time and money spent on resolving production defects. Finally, a quantitative approach for identifying the release criteria.
Yes.
With that said, this brings us to an end of this insightful webinar today. For further to this, we would love to have you all in touch with us. Please do visit www.gallup.net and write to us at marketing@gallup.net with all your suggestions, feedback, and questions. We look forward for the upcoming webinar sessions, and Gallup would strive its best to continue its commitment towards sharing the software testing thought leadership. Thank you one and all. Bye-bye.
Thank you.